Hey AP Human Geographers, we're here today to go over the Unit 1 and Unit 2 packet for the Grand Review. We're going to go through each answer and basically explain some of the misconceptions or ways that we got to the answers for your AP Human Geography packets. With the Grand Review, it is something that you can have multiple answers for a specific question, but as long as you have a rationale or a way to explain it, then you're good to go.
So it kind of varies by perspective. So we're going to offer you our perspective, but this packet was actually created with the intent of there being multiple perspectives. So if you got a different answer, that's okay. We're just going to tell you what our answers are and what our rationale is, so that way you have that available to you. And remember, we would like for you to print these packets so that way you can refer back to them on the day of the AP exam. If you are able to print the packets, then the way you can turn these in is going to be, you could actually take pictures of it and turn it in through Teams. You can take pictures of it and email it to us. You can send me a video of you just showing me where you've done the packets, but we just have to see that you've completed it. So that's why we're making these videos, to hopefully help you to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. We want you to be able to use this information on the AP exam. So having that printed out form is going to be the best way, obviously, for you to be able to use that content for the exam itself. Remember, it's FRQs. So this explanation that we're going to give you going through each one is going to be helpful if you do get a prompt that refers to one of these terms. Understanding it in and out, basically being able to explain it on paper is what we're looking for.
The first thing that you're asked to do is to identify map types. So pretty simple identification here. Number one is going to be the Mercator map, the Mercator projection. You can tell because it's set up at like 90-degree angles. All the lines are perpendicular to one another. Number two is going to be good homolocine. So that's sometimes called the orange peel map. So that's an easy way to remember that, is that it kind of looks like an orange peel once you actually peel the orange and try to lay out the peel. And then number three is Robinson, my personal favorite. Remember, Robinson distorts everything on the map, but it does it in very tiny amounts. So it's still very aesthetically pleasing. And number four is Azimuthal. So Azimuthal is going to be a polar projection. So if you did put polar there, then that's fine. It just centers the map on one of the poles. That's what Azimuthal is. The next section is just some vocabulary matching for you. So for number 5, it says a computer system that stores, organizes, retrieves, analyzes, and displays geographic data. That would be E, which is GIS, Geographic
Information Systems.
Thank you. Number 6 is the forms superimposed on physical environment by the activities of humans. That would be C, cultural landscape. Number 7, the spread of an idea or innovation from its source. That would be A, cultural diffusion. Number 8, the interactions between human societies and the physical environment. That would be B, cultural ecology. Number 9, the space-based global navigation satellite system. That would be F, GPS, global positioning system. Number 10, the physical environment rather than the social conditions determines culture. That's kind of a very simplified way to describe D, environmental determinism. Your environment determines your fate. Number 11, the small or large-scale acquisition of information, either in recording or real time. That would be H, remote sensing. And then number 12, the idea that the environment sets constraints or limitations, but culture is otherwise determined by social conditions. That would be G, possibilism. Anything is possible.
All right, so that does it for the identification of map types and then basic vocabulary. We're going to move on with the next page, and you have to choose the one that does not belong with the others. So the first one that we have is number 13. It's got township and range, clustered rural settlement, and then grid street pattern. So with the township and range and the grid street pattern, they're both going to use like a gridded system to plot pieces of land for different things, but again, it's going to be focused on using that grid-like pattern, whereas clustered rural settlement just refers to settlement that's clustered in rural areas. So it's not going to fit into that grid-like pattern that we see with township and range. Okay, number 14 is site, situation, and relative location. If you remember the Unit 1 vocabulary, if you look, site and situation are different things. Site is more precise, whereas situation is going to be something that's more relative to, different locations that you may be referencing. So situation and relative location actually fit in together really well, whereas site is too precise. So site would be the answer there for number 14. For number 15, we have latitude and longitude, site, situation, and absolute location. So just like with number 14, number 15, we've got site, that's a more precise location. It's an absolute location, and you can have a latitude and longitude to kind of identify that specific site. Whereas situation does not fit with these terms. So that would be C for number 15.
Situation's just very informal. Situation is saying like, oh, well, the United States, it's located below Canada. Okay, that's not like a very formal description.
Right.
It's not telling you the precise coordinates or anything like that. It's just kind of giving you like a roundabout.
Yep. All right. So number 16, we have globalization, nationalism, foreign investment, and multinational corporations. So globalization, it really talks about, countries basically working together towards a global economy and different initiatives. It's just the more connected kind of world that we live in today. Nationalism is focused on one state. So that's something to kind of keep in mind, that you have, extreme pride and loyalty to one state. And foreign investment, of course, that's going to be foreign relations. That's going to be other countries involved. Multinational corporations includes multiple different countries. So all three, globalization, foreign investment, and multinational corporations fit together, whereas nationalism does not fit into that definition.
Number 17 really fits better with Unit 7 when we're talking about settlements. Some people put it with Unit 1, and so it's kind of shoved in here. But basically the idea that goes along with number 17 is called central place theory. And just as a very simplistic explanation of central place theory, the idea is that there are larger cities, and in larger cities you have a more diverse offering of services. And so big, very unique kind of services are going to be able to locate in bigger cities because people are more likely to be drawn to those, and so they're in more urban settings. So the idea of like an airport, a major park, a natural harbor, a public sports facility, all of those are very what's called high threshold and high range types of services, and that just means that a lot of people are willing to travel a long distance to get to those things.
And because there are fewer of them. So if you think about like a public sports facility, and if we talked about like, specifically a professional sports team or something like that, then you're only going to have so many. Like in the NBA, you only have 30 teams. People are going to be willing to travel outside of their states even just to go, and basically watch a game. So
yeah, we don't have an NBA team in Milton. The answer to number 17 should be B, grid street pattern, because that's not a service that's being offered. That's not an attraction that's pulling people into a city. That's just the way that a city is going to be set up.
All right, number 18, we have westernization, uniform consumption preferences, enhanced communications, and local traditions. So when we look at, just history, you could talk about like westernization or catching up with the West. That's going to be, different states trying to adopt different policies from Western Europe. Uniform consumption preferences is going to be like where you have everybody on the same page as far as like what they're consuming, what the markets are. And then enhanced communications is going to allow for things like global trade and communication between states and foreign investment, whatever it may be. Local traditions are going to be more to those homogenous groups of people that may be part of folk culture or something like that, or isolated. So that really doesn't fit in here. So the answer there would be D. Number 19 is a little interesting. We've got time zones, the United States railroads, and 15 degrees. So the U.S. railroad system is going to allow for the development of time zones. Every 15 degrees on a map, you'll have a different time zone. So China actually does not have multiple time zones, even though they should, looking at land size. They go off of Chinese Standard Time. So the answer here would be B. All right, moving on to number 20. It says match the following. Some regions have more than one answer, and they do. We'll talk about one that you can use twice here, just for some, clarification. Formal region, we have A, Pensacola. It does fit into that category of it being a city. It's a formal region. They have, identifiable boundaries. And then we have C, Florida, which is the state. It's got political boundaries that outline that formal region. And then F, we've got the Rust Belt. And that refers to the deindustrialized states in the north and the Great Lakes region where you had a massive amount of steel production. So that could be something that you could argue would be a formal region where you can outline those states where they had deindustrialization taking place in that region. Okay, next is functional region or nodal region, where you have a node or a hub, and you have services being delivered in a specific region. And so for that answer, we've got B, the Pensacola News Journal, the basically radius of delivery that you have to different houses, businesses, whatever they may be. E is going to be Airline Hub, and that's going to be just the locations where the airlines actually connect to other airports in the United States or wherever they may be. Vernacular region is our last one, and that's going to just refer to that informal location where you have a kind of preconceived notion of where those boundaries may lie, but not an actual, physical boundary or political boundary. So that would be D, the South, right? So different people, it means different things. It's a relative location. And then F, you could potentially use here with the Rust Belt not having those identifiable features maybe anymore because of deindustrialization or urban decay, that you can't really, pinpoint exactly where the boundaries begin and end.
So the next section asks you to match each of the examples that are given with the type of diffusion that it is exemplifying. So for number 23, Spanish is the fastest growing language in the United States because of, the answer would be A, relocation diffusion, people who speak Spanish coming to the United States. Number 24, Apple invented the modern smartphone, but Android controlled 80% of the world market as of 2016 because of, the answer would be D, stimulus diffusion. They took the idea behind the smartphone and then they kind of shifted it and adjusted it to meet the needs of their consumers. So anytime you have the underlying principle staying the same, but you're changing it a little bit, that's going to be stimulus diffusion. Number 25, fashion trends may diffuse from New York or Los Angeles to Chicago, then Milwaukee, then West Bend because of B, hierarchical diffusion. Anytime you see something going from an area of high influence to lesser influence, trickling down, then that is going to be hierarchical. And then number 26, the widespread fear of a roaming band of killer clowns in 2016 was an example of C, contagious diffusion. We probably need to update that example. I think a really good example could potentially be maybe the spread of coronavirus throughout the world in 2019, 2020. So,
yep.
Number 27, we've got just a few multiple choice questions for you. So number 27 asks, the why of where refers to. The best answer here, in my opinion, is going to be letter D, which is the idea that the explanation of a spatial pattern is crucial. Okay, so if you're asking why something is where it is, that's what you're looking at, is how are things arranged on this map, and how can I explain these phenomenons on a map? Okay, that's what the why of where is referring to. And then number 28, which of the following maps would be most likely to use shading to display a variable pattern? The answer would be B, choropleth. Remember, choropleth always uses shading or different colors to represent data. The last question for the Unit 1 review packet is Minnesota was settled primarily by blank, but St. Paul's toponym indicates it was settled by blank. So this is just important when you're looking at toponyms to understand that the name of a place is oftentimes a little bit reflective of their history, sometimes, not always. So for the answer to this, the answer would be C. So Minnesota was primarily settled by Lutherans, but that St. Paul's toponym obviously indicates that there's going to be influence from Catholics because of the use of saint.
Good. Right. On to Unit 2, population and migration. So we're going to be matching the definitions with the terms here on the right-hand side. Number 30 says the ability of a resource base to sustain its population. That's going to be its carrying capacity. That would be B. So number 31 says the population shift from urban to rural areas, and that's going to be D, counter-urbanization. Number 32, the number of working age people compared to the number of people too old or too young to work. That's the dependency ratio, F. Number 33 is migration within a state, and that would be internal migration, I. Number 34 is migration between states, and that would be external migration. Number 35 is the difference between in-migration and out-migrations, and that would be K, net migration. Number 36, the flight of talented people away from an area. That would be A, brain drain. And then we have number 37, the process by which immigrants from a particular place follow others from that place to another place, and that would be C, chain migration. Number 38, CBR, crude birth rate, minus CDR, crude death rate per thousand, would be J, the natural increase rate. Number 39, number of children a woman is likely to have. That would be their total fertility rate, L. And then number 40, the number of children women have per 1,000 women would be E, crude birth rate. Number 41, the number of deaths under the age of 2 per 1,000. That would be H, infant mortality rate. All right.
So the next section asks you to choose the cause of the other two. So it gives you sets of 3 things, and then you're looking for the one that causes the other 2. So for number 42, you're looking at Columbus discovers America, crops exchanged between the Western and Eastern Hemisphere, millions of Native Americans killed by disease. So the answer would be A, Columbus had to discover America before the other 2 were able to happen. Number 43, your set here is one-child policy, poverty, and overpopulation. I said that the answer should be C because overpopulation can cause poverty, and overpopulation can cause those antinatalist policies such as the one-child policy. Number 44, we have poverty, drug trafficking, and guest workers. So I put A, poverty, because poverty can cause drug trafficking, and poverty can also cause guest workers. Guest workers just refers to like temporary workers that leave the country to go work somewhere else and bring the money back. So if you have a lot of poverty in one area, then it could cause people to leave to find temporary work and then bring the money back. Number 45, high standard of living, large metropolitan population, and stage 3 of the demographic transition. I put the answer as letter C. Because you have to have the stage 3 of the demographic transition before you can have those higher standards of living and the large metropolitan population like in urban areas. For number 46, immigration, remittances, and stage 4 of the demographic transition, I see this as kind of a 1, 2, 3 process. So the answer should be letter C, that causes, that's the cause there. Stage 4 of the demographic transition model is going to cause A, immigration, which is more immigrants coming into your country.
The pull factors.
Immigrants typically travel to like stage 3 and 4 countries. And then letter B, remittances. Remittances is a word that refers to money that immigrants make and send home to their families.
Right.
And so you have to have immigration to have remittances. You have to have stage 4 to have that immigration.
All right, so we're going to start with number 47, which has poverty, war, and migration. The effect here is going to be migration, and poverty and warfare are going to lead to that migration, people leaving those countries that have instability or lack of economic opportunities. Just like we talked about with balkanization and the video that we watched Once Brothers, Vlade Divac is going to have basically these opportunities in the United States that he did not have back in Yugoslavia. So poverty or lack of economic opportunity and stimulation is going to lead to people migrating out of those countries. All right, number 48, we've got racism, exclusion of non-white immigrants, and quota laws from the 1920s and 60s. The effect here is going to be racism, and what's going to cause that racism is going to be the exclusion of non-white immigrants, and then quota laws from the 1920s to the 1960s, just like the Chinese Exclusion Act. Number 49, it says young age structure, not married, high level of migration. This goes back to those Ravenstein's laws of migration, where it basically says the majority of people that are going to migrate are going to be male, and they're going to be in the young age structure from their 20s to 40s. So we know that, in order to have a high level of migration, you're going to have people that are not married, people that have a young age structure based off of those Ravenstein's laws.
The next section asks you to look at some population pyramids and identify what stage of the DTM that they are experiencing. So for number 50, this population pyramid, I think best represents stage 2. You can tell because it has a very clear pyramid-like structure on top, but the bottom is starting to look more like square. And so you can see that that is starting that transition into stage 3. Number 51 is going to be stage 3. Remember, the upside down ice cream cone is how I always describe a stage 3 pyramid. Number 52 is best representative of stage 4. You can tell that the sides are very kind of like slender, and that's going to be because of the lack of population growth that happens in stage 4. Number 53, that is almost a perfect pyramid, and that's going to be representative of stage 1. Number 54 is going to be representative of stage 4, because you can tell at the bottom of the pyramid it's going to be much like a square, so that tells you that their birth rate is staying about at a 0 approximately. And then number 55 is going to be stage 5, because it's starting to look like that upside down pyramid.
Okay, moving on to the next section, I'm going to go over the different examples here of cities within the United States that reflect different levels of the population pyramid. You have to do some research here. This part is honestly the hardest. We have to figure out which one is each different city, and then of course there's one that represents the United States. So if we know that the United States is in stage 4, it's pretty easy to identify a stage 4 population pyramid. You can kind of look at it and tell. That's going to be our last pyramid there, 61. So we can go ahead and get that out of the way and put USA for 61. Did I do it again? Yeah. Now, starting back at the beginning, if we look at the population pyramid, some of the identifiable features here, we see that there are a lot of people in the working class, and there are a lot of children at the bottom of this pyramid that are taking up a percentage of the population there. That's going to be best representative of Detroit, Michigan, due to the automotive industry. So you can see a lot of workers, male and female, in that category there for their population pyramid. A lot of people actually mix these up with Laredo, Texas, and Detroit, Michigan, because if you look at the second population pyramid, you see a larger population of children at the bottom of the pyramid. And that's going to be because of informal jobs and Laredo, Texas being a border town, basically on the border of Mexico. And so that's going to lead to a high traffic of immigration through that city, and a lot of jobs that are kind of created because of that, and opportunities for those immigrants seeking out jobs. All right. The next population pyramid we have is in stage 5, and we know that this is going to best fit with Naples, Florida, because it is a retirement community. So that's going to be kind of easy to identify. You see the elderly population making up the majority of the pyramid there. Next, we have a clear kind of skew here in the population pyramid towards the male side in the working class, and that's going to be representative of a military base. And so when we look at this, the only one that reflects this kind of population pyramid would be Unalaska, which is known for its Coast Guard base and, of course, military operations there. The next population pyramid that we have, number 60, is going to show a clear spike in the number of people that are in the age range between 20 and 30 on male and female side of the population pyramid. So that would be Lawrence, Kansas. That's going to be the University of Kansas that's located there. And then the last one we already discussed is the United States.
All right, the next couple of questions are asking you to identify push and pull factors. This should be super easy. I know that you've had lots and lots of practice with that. So number 62, ethnic cleansing, should be push. Number 63, natural disaster, should be push. Number 64, available jobs, that should be pull. Number 65, war, that should be push. Number 66, chain migration, that would be pull. And number 67, overpopulation, that would be push. I want to go ahead and address number 68. This is a bad question. I think that the College Board information that they've put out for human geography is reflective of data that's no longer relevant.
We got a census this year, 2020.
So I think the College Board has put out information as of like 2008. And so that's kind of the information we're working with. So just know that according to the College Board information, the answer to number 68 should be Sub-Saharan Africa, but according to the latest data, that's not accurate. So Sub-Saharan Africa actually has a significant population now because of the population growth in Sub-Saharan Africa. So realistically, if we're going off of just like the numbers, then Europe would probably be the lowest there. But just know that's also complicated because what College Board defines as Southeast Asia may not be what somebody else defines as Southeast Asia or whatever. So just know that that's not a good question. College Board answer would be Sub-Saharan Africa. Real answer, probably more up to date, would be Europe.
So number 69, you're just going to take 5.7 billion and multiply that by 1.6% to get your answer. That is C, 91,200,000. All right, and that would be your number of people that you're adding to your population each year. All right, number 70, the population of the United States is approximately 300 million, which I think based off of latest data, it's like 360. But anyways, it says the land area is approximately 9 million square kilometers. The arithmetic density of the United States is approximately what? So then we're going to take 300 million, divide it by 9 million, and get 30 people per square kilometer approximately, because you're going to just round down basically. All right, number 71, compared to the Netherlands, Egypt has C, a low arithmetic density. Remember, with arithmetic density, you're just taking the amount of people that you have in a population and placing that over the amount of land that you have available to that population. Because Egypt has a larger land size than the Netherlands, it has a high physiological density though, because they have a lot of farmers that are forced to, cluster along the Nile River Valley, because a lot of that available land that Egypt does have is going to be desert. And then a high number of farmers per capita. If you look at the level of development here, that's going to help you understand it. The Netherlands is more highly developed country, and they're going to have jobs in the service industry, whereas Egypt is going to have more jobs in agriculture.
All right, so number 72 is asking you which of the following states had zero or negative population growth as of 2016. So number 1 is China. China has lowered their population growth, but they haven't reached zero yet. Things like the one-child policy and then the two-child policy, those are working, and they've gotten their population growth down a lot, but they are still growing. Number 2, India is still growing. They've put in a lot of policies regarding like birth control and having those kind of things available, but still growing. Number 3, Italy. Italy is one of those European countries that is in stage 5, so they are declining. Number 4, Japan.
Stage 5 of what?
The demographic transition model.
Not ETM?
Well, that too.
Aren't we all?
Number 5, Japan. Japan is kind of our classic example of a negative population growth, so that's absolutely on our list. Number 5, Pakistan. Pakistan is definitely growing. That's there in that South Asia bubble that is, constantly increasing. And then number 6, Russia. Russia is also declining. They're in stage 5. So the answer here would be D, which is options 3, 4, and 6. Number 73, generally speaking, countries with high fertility rates usually have high what else? So this kind of goes along with DTM and development. So when you're looking at high fertility rates, that's usually countries in the lower stages of development. That's usually stage 1 and 2 countries. And so they would also have high, the answer would be B, infant mortality rates. That would also be very typical when they have less medical technology.
All right, so number 74 addresses Malthusian theory, and it says Thomas Malthus' theories may be regarded as, we're going to go with partially correct here. So his theories actually talk about the idea that the population growth rate is going to outpace production for food, basically. People are going to starve to death. But what he didn't take into account is going to be the fact that we have, innovations that are going to lead to a larger output of agricultural products. So then we would go with C here, partially correct. Some people are starving, but LDCs have increased their food supply with new agricultural technology. We talked about that with the GMO debate and pesticide use. LDCs are going to adapt to these challenges of population growth in like sub-Saharan Africa and Southeast Asia by, adopting these new technologies. All right. Number 75, a country with a high dependency ratio probably has. So when we're talking about dependency ratio being high, that means you have a lot of people outside of the workforce. And in that situation, you're going to have a highly developed country, typically going to be in stage 5. And so they would have a low birth rate. Remember, they're going to have a lot of old people on their population pyramid and a lot of people that have outlived sexual maturity. You're also going to have lower gender inequality because of the fact that with LDCs, you typically see more of the issues with inequalities between men and women, whereas with MDCs, they have adjusted towards a more egalitarian society. And you're also going to have a higher standard of living, just like when we look back at the Netherlands and said, okay, they're a more developed country, they're going to have more jobs in the service industry. That means they're going to have more economic opportunities for the workforce.
So our last question for today, number 76, asks which continents are commonly associated with high numbers of refugees in the early 21st century. So I had a hard time figuring out what exactly that question was asking, so I kind of answered it in 2 different ways. So the first way I thought about it was high numbers of refugees like leaving the area, like areas where you have those situations where people need to flee. So based on that information, I would say that you would include Africa, Asia, and South America. And so that option is going to be option E. But I also made note that if you're talking about receiving refugees, then you definitely want to include Europe and North America. So I would also put G as a possible answer as well. So it just kind of depends on the perspective that you're looking at there.
Right, and more specific questioning there too. So it says associated with high number of refugees. Well, what does that really mean? Are we talking about immigration or immigration, right?
All right, guys, so I think that wraps this up for today. You should have all the answers now that you need for the Unit 1 packet and the Unit 2 packet of the Grand Review. Remember, these are for you to have in preparation for your AP exam, and hopefully we'll be able to get the next packets up and going next week.
Shout out to my boy Chase for drawing that with pen.
I love you!
Bye, guys. Love you. Great Scott!